What do you do, flight crew? FTC. Flight team stand up! I carried this year. December is here. We have what they won't tell you about Kevin Durant's return. Jimmy High Roller. Let's check it out. The Achilles Injury Hall of Infamy. The hell does that mean?
Here are some notable NBA players who have suffered a major Achilles injury.
Dominique Wilkins had an injury?
There are some good players, some great players, and a handful of Hall of Famers. Achilles injuries suck. A lot. Out of these 17 players, 4 were benched after their devastating Achilles injury, and 4 others either retired or left the NBA as a result of the injury.
Wow.
The other 8 were lucky enough to still play at even remotely close to the same level they played at pre-injury. And even
that's how Brandon Jennings left the NBA. The Achilles shit.
Their entire game was
that dude was raw in the beginning of his career.
A torn or ruptured Achilles is considered possibly the worst injury an athlete can sustain. It's the closest thing to an immediate farewell tour, which leaves us with one of the greatest players to ever lace up and his long-awaited return to action that may be one of the greatest comeback stories we've ever seen, or like many other stars before him, may just be the beginning of the end. In a study conducted earlier this year regarding the prognosis of elite basketball players after an Achilles tendon rupture, researchers found that out of 12 NBA players that were being monitored throughout their rehabilitation, only 1 made a full recovery to his pre-injury peak. In that same study, researchers found that players on average experienced a 43% drop in performance during their immediate return to play, but slowly regained up to 80% of their pre-injury performance level. In other words, players that came back from major Achilles injuries returned to play about half as good, and eventually worked their way back to about 80% of their pre-injury peak. Just 80%. And those who made it back that far are considered the lucky ones. Kevin Durant has spent 18 months recovering from a devastating injury in the finals 2 seasons ago. A rehab timeline that is twice as long as the average time it takes for NBA players to make their
playing with a beanie, bro. This ain't the damn 2K part, bro.
Games since his return, what we've seen from KD looks very promising. His first step looks quick. He has no hesitation on his pull-up game. He's making great rotations on defense and contesting shots. He's getting up the court surprisingly fast in transition, and he's making quick cuts in the lane and getting to the hoop like a vintage KD would. It almost feels unsettling to see Kevin Durant back on the court. So many fans and analysts quick to push him out of their top players list because of his injuries, which is understandable. Until you see that silky smooth jumper of his, snap back to reality and remind yourself, this guy just might be the best player on the planet. But more reassuring than anything we've seen so far is KD's aggressiveness in these preseason games. He's getting to the rim at will, and instead of settling outside, he's blowing by elite defenders and showing athleticism that makes no sense from a 32-year-old 7-footer coming off of a ruptured Achilles.
Wow.
I think even the most loyal Durant fans had high levels of concerns on KD's return. Would he be able to rise up on his shots the same? Would he be able to create space on offense the same? Would he still be a triple threat with the ball in his hands? Or would he be destined to settle for contested threes for the rest of his days?
Never know.
In about 90 minutes of action this season, I think we've got an answer. Kevin Durant is back. And it is a beautiful thing to see. Because I don't think we've discussed just how terrible his injury was and how likely or unlikely it was that we would ever see an elite Kevin Durant again. For some perspective, take a wild guess at how many NBA players have never returned to the NBA after a torn or ruptured Achilles. 5%? Maybe 15%? Try 40%. 4 out of every 10 NBA players that had the same injury Kevin Durant had never even returned to the NBA.
Wow.
For example, let's look at this list. DeMarcus Cousins has been fighting to return to his pre-injury performance level, and
bro, he was averaging 25
later,
before that.
He's still a shell of his former self. John Wall was an all-NBA point guard before his injury, and now we'll be.
Bro, why are you violating him, fam? Jimmy High Roller, bro. This dude said he's Harden's sidekick. Bro, you gotta re-edit this, man. This is not, bro. That's wrong. This dude called him Harden's sidekick
as an adequate
dog.
Who even knows when we'll see Klay Thompson again? Even the late
Bro
only played in 42% of all games.
You must not like Wall, bro.
His Achilles tear and averaged just 19
this
points
dude
per
just
game.
taught him Harden's sidekick. Hell nah, bro.
Leading up to his injury. In fact, out of all of the players on this list, only one made a full recovery, and that's Dominique Wilkins.
Yeah.
So what does that give us? A 25% chance of being benched into obscurity, a 25% chance of retiring or leaving the NBA, a 44% chance of still resembling the player you once were, and a 6% chance of a full recovery. Not the biggest sample size, but I still don't like those odds. But if those numbers weren't eye-opening enough, check this out. Here's a graph of those same 16 players with their overall production of points, rebounds, and assists in the season before their Achilles injury. Excluding a couple players, nearly all of them putting up elite numbers. Now, here's their overall production in the season following their Achilles injury. Every single player either retired or got considerably worse after their devastating injury other than Dominique Wilkins. All-stars turn into rotational players after an Achilles injury. Brandon Jennings was a rising star before his injury, but after, scoring 10 points was considered a productive night for him. DeMarcus Cousins went from one of the best big men in the entire league to playing 30 games in 2 seasons coming off the bench. Mehmet Okur fell off a cliff after his Achilles injury.
I remember that occurred, dude.
Retired. Elgin Baylor, retired. Isaiah Thomas, retired. Mario Chalmers, playing over in Timbuktu, Italy.
Mario Chalmers is a fucking
Durant.
nobody, bro.
So if
I hate Chalmers, bro. He made that game when he shot against Rose in Memphis, bro.
What would your prediction be? But just seeing Durant back on the court is just awesome. Now, he's still not in the clear. Of course, he will have to continue to ease his way back into full minutes and full speed, but could you imagine the idea of losing one of the most unguardable players of all time, a once-in-a-generation player, to an Achilles injury? Could you imagine if we never got to see KD play again? What would his legacy look like? And how would he be remembered in hindsight? His numbers don't do him any justice. In 20 years, if my son asked me how good Kevin Durant was, there's no way 27 points per game and a pair of rings even comes close to explaining his uncanny and alien-like skill set. The man is unguardable. He'll give you a 40-piece in 18 shots, and you'll seriously wonder if he's even trying. And we are fortunate that Kevin Durant plays in an era where new techniques and protocols for rehabbing and recovering now allow players to at least have hope that they'll make a full recovery. Even 20 years ago, the idea of a 7
Kevin Durant, bro, comb your hair, fam.
Injury peak
Come on, bro.
A torn Achilles was absurd. According
this dude
to a
doesn't give a
2013
shit.
medical study that identified 18 players who suffered from a major Achilles injury, 7 players never even returned to the league, and 3 players only played 1 season post-injury. Players who did return missed an average of 56 games and saw their PER decline considerably in their first and second seasons back.
Wow.
But it doesn't take a basketball savant to see that Kevin Durant has spent the last 18 months with a laser focus on making his return to the game. The best players in the world spend their entire careers trying to perfect a shot like this. My man Durant said, "Hold my Achilles, I'ma smack this 3 real quick." You just can't teach this.
Yeah.
And in the case of Kevin Durant, it looks like not even a ruptured Achilles can stop it. Hope you all enjoyed, and as always, until
hey
next
man, that's like kept it up, man, as usual, man. Coming up, FlightReacts next, man, on the road to 4 million.